I don't, so because I'm on the faculty side. Board or Tosho visa. Okay, so download lab 5 documents. We're gonna go through that together and hopefully we'll be able to finish in about an hour and a half. So doing this lab, just be careful on what you type. Okay, so syntax is essential for all command. So pay attention to what you type, what you enter in your command. So the first thing that we are gonna be doing would be command prompt. So if you want to get started on that step, you can, but the lab 5 is located on your canvas. It should say groups and users groups and CMD and Ntfs permissions and PowerShell. So I wanted to use PowerShell a little bit because this is used in the industry quite a bit. Some job would require you to know how to use PowerShell in Windows. And so we are gonna touch a little bit on access control lists today with PowerShell, but you can also refer to Microsoft documentation to practice PowerShell because it's one of those things that you have to practice. Okay. Any question? Okay, so if you're using Windows 10, you should have access to command prompt and PowerShell. It's already been installed, built in, right? If you're using anything older than Windows 7 on especially the home releases, you have to install them separately. Right? You have to install PowerShell outside so you can download and install it. I think that they're at version 7 or 8 or something like that. I remember when I was training my student years ago, it was like 4 point something. All right, so let's start with opening command prompt for the first step. So we are going to type in CMD and you're gonna right click and choose run as administrator. This is different than just running as the regular user. So when you are configuring your systems or creating accounts, you want to be at a higher privilege, but you should always access your computer as a regular user. Okay, so this is what it shows here. Let me change the font. Okay. So the first step is to search for CMD in Windows search bar right here. And then we're going to right click and choose run as administrator. You are going to use a command called netuser. And this command allows you to add in the options in the case where we would add the user. So, oops. So when we're doing step 4, after we open the command prompt as the administrator, we are going to add the user called CIS27 student. Okay, we're doing lab 5. If you want to download that, we just got started. And the password will be the following the user account. So if you don't want to use password, then you have to tell it no password, but we want to implement password for this user. So this will allow you to create a user account called CIS27 student password. Okay. And with the password there. All right. So this is the command that I enter, and you can copy and paste it. That's fine, or you can type it. Okay. It should translate just fine. So once the command is successfully completed, it will say this. If it's throwing an error, you're typing in something wrong. So remember that in command prompt, we would use netuser/add to create a user account. and you have to have a privilege of at least super user or power user or the administrator. Okay. So after we create the user account called this with this password, right? We are going to add that account to a group called administrators, and there are multiple level of groups. We have a local group which exists on the computer, and then you might have a global group that exists in the domain or on the network. So when you wanted to add a group to your system, right, you would use a local group, and in this case, this group already exists. Okay, so if you want to add a new group, you just simply do net local group / add and then the group name, right? But in this case, we are going to use an existing built-in group called administrator, and we are going to add that user account that we created to it. So here, I'm going to go ahead and copy this command, and then I'm going to go to my command prompt again, and I'm going to paste it or click on it. And now what it did was it added this account to this group called administrator, and you will see. So just to give you the visual on this, if I go to computer management console and I go to local users and groups and I click on the group, right? I have the administrator group. If I click on the user, I had created that user through command prompt. You see? And if you double click that user, if you go to member of, see how it adds the administrator there? It doesn't do that by default, by the way. It just adds everybody in the regular users group, okay, at the low level, because it follows the least privilege principle. So when you did that second command here, what it did was it took that user account that you created, this one, and it added it to the administrator group. Okay. And when we see this, we call it group nest. We can nest the group. We can nest the user into multiple groups. Okay. All right. So now we're going to look at the users in our system by using a net user command. So what this gives you is it's going to tell you the type of groups that you have on the left. Now, if you're looking at the graphical user interface, right, you don't see this group, right? You see that? So in command prompt, when you're doing a net user command, you would see additional group that's normally hidden in this area. You see? So this is why we're using command line and also your PowerShell more. Okay. Now this account belongs to this group, right? So you would see all the accounts that you need, and then you can also use net local group and to look at your groups, of course. So the practice is to give you a little bit of understanding of how to use these commands. Okay, because you will likely see server that you don't have graphical user interface. So answer this question, take a screenshot. How many users do you see listed? So I have administrator, guest, this, right? Micro, MVC default count. So 3, 6, 7. There's some hidden accounts that you can see in command prompt. Question. Okay, so answer the question, count up the number of accounts you see. And then what we're going to do is we are going to look at a specific user. So once you create the user, what if you want to look at that profile of the user, right? You can do a net user. So it's faster. This. Okay. So I can do this. So what this gives you is the actual user account, right? We didn't specify any of the full name information and so on. So in the graphical user interface, let's say that I wanted to make a user, I simply go to Computer Management Console, click on users, local users and group, right? And then right here, I can do a new user. You see how all of these fields that we have to fill out? So those, the information that you plug in here, when you're doing command prompt, it basically gives you the detail of all those fields that you add in.
So so like some warehouses have those RF scanners, and every employee needs to log in, and it needs to create more logins. Is that you create it?
If they are using Windows, yes. Okay. Yes. And most likely you're gonna have a domain account instead of a local account. So it's on the network. So it will be on a global group. So here, when you double click the account, right, it basically gives you the profile information. So what you see there is the account profile information. Okay. So once you have that, it will tell you when was the password last set. So one of the tech support tasks for you also is to reset password. And you can also check if there's an event. So let's say that I have an attacker that's entering my network and they create an account or access somebody's account, right? And then reset the password. It gives you the timestamp here when the password was set and when the account was created. Now on the graphical user interface, you don't see that. You only see it in command prompt. You see? Okay, so answer the question, when was the password set? And then what kind of local group that you see? And what's a global group that you see? We didn't set any kind of domain, so it's gonna be on the system only. So go here and look at this information and answer the question. Your global local group and your global group membership. I have none, right? I didn't tell the system that to make it a global group. Okay, so now we are going to view the groups by using net local group. And what that does is it lists all the groups that exist as groups on that system. Okay, what do I mean? On the, if you click the groups folder, this is what you see, right? Which is the same as this. So if you wanted to find out what type of groups you have real quick, this is what you see. Now the asterisk next to the name is what's known as a built-in group, right? Instead of a custom group. So these groups come with the OS. They're made in the OS already. Now, if you make a new group like this, okay, or in the command prompt, that is your custom group. That's what you make. And then you have to really control the permissions or the privilege for that group. And then we can view a specific group by doing net local group administrator. And in command prompt, just remember, you can arrow up to repeat the command from the previous, arrow down to go to the next one, right? So when you look at specific, if I'm looking at administrators, I wanted to see who's in administrator. It's like double clicking the administrator group in here. So if I wanted to double click this, right, I can see who are the users in this group. So on command prompt, when you do net local group and the group name, it actually gives you the details about that group, including its members. Question. Okay, then on the next part, we are just gonna simply close our command prompt. So go here, close. Then we are going to make a folder. So you are going to go ahead and put it on your desktop. Or I'm sorry, in C drive. You need to go to this PC and then C drive. So let's minimize all of this. this PC, go to your C drive, and then we can right click, make a new folder. We can call this CIS27. I want you to see the GUI side, the graphical user interface side, and when you're working with PowerShell, I want you to also see it from a PowerShell standpoint. Okay, because it makes sense to us when we're doing certain commands, and if you can visibly see it, you would understand. Okay, so now inside that folder, open it up, right click, make another subfolder called test. And you can do this in command prompt too. We had a lab on that already, right? Okay. So I want you to see from the GUI side, and then what you're going to do is you are going to move back one level back to the CIS27 folder. So click on the Windows C and then right click, go to properties. Right click CIS27 and look at its properties. Now, when you're looking at the property sheets, right, this contains all the characteristics, the permissions, all the things that you set for that object, which is a folder. In Windows, it uses NTFS. NTFS stands for New Technology File System Permissions to control that object. So when you click on the Security tab, it shows you the type of permissions that are associated with subjects, which are groups and users. So in access management, we normally control who has access to what, how the subject is acting upon an object. Okay, so here what you see is a group of groups, right? And then their associated permissions. And we always manage by group. So now that's different than the sharing permissions, which are less. So there are two types of permission: NTFS permissions and shared permissions, right? So an NTFS permission only exists if you format your OS as NTFS. Okay. So when you take the old operating system class, I'm sure Mr. Loya covered different file system. So if the file system you're using is NTFS, then you can have NTFS permission. It is related to your file system access control. All right. So once you have that, you are going to edit this. Okay. So I'm here, right? And I'm going to click edit. I'm going to go ahead and add a user, which is what I created, CIS27 student. Now, if you mistype it, it's not going to find it. Okay, so if you type CIS27, it should be able to find it. Okay, and here's my CIS27. I'm going to go ahead and click add that, right? And here it's already there. Okay. So you can check the name as you finish typing the user account, because sometimes we might not remember their full username. So you can put in a few, right? And if it can distinguish it, it will find it and it will put an underline underneath that account for you. So that's how I can add a user to an object, which is a folder. And by default, this user is given read and execute for that folder, list the content of the folder, and read, and that's it. So they can view what's in that folder and execute what's in that folder, like run an exe. And I want this person to modify, so I can click modify. And as you click modify, you notice that it checks right. So modify allows you to change, right, the object. Meaning that I can add new files to it and I can remove new files from it. Okay. Any question? Okay, so once you have set that, you click apply, then you click OK. Now go back to that user account. You should see the allow permission check there. Okay. This is a little bit different than the Linux permissions. Linux permissions have less permissions that you need to control, but you know, the concept in changing permissions is about the same for all OSs. Okay, so I need you to take a screen capture. You can do all print screen or snip, whatever you like. And then you are gonna go ahead and click on the users group. And I want you to check out this users group, because if you don't nest the CIS27 student into the administrator, right? Because remember, every account starts with the users group. So remember when we looked at the original permission, how it only has those 3, right? Because it's least privileged, that account started with those 3 permission: read, execute, list, and read folder. Right? We can elevate the permissions by giving individual explicit permission, or we can nest them into a group that has higher permission. Okay, which the group is probably a better ideal. So when you click on the users group, I want you to look at what permissions are listed there, and I want you to type that out. Read, execute, list folder, read for this question. Any question? So we already added the account. We modify for that account the permission. We included the modified permission in the allow. Now, when you are using permission, if you deny, it overtakes allow. Okay. So for example, if I found someone committing fraud and they're currently accessing that folder, what do I do? What do you think I should do? I should disable the account. That's the quickest way, right? Or what if I don't want to disable their account? I want them to still be able to access their email or the network, but I no longer want them to access the folder. What do I do? Yeah, so I can remove that individual user from the group that's accessing it, or the list itself, right? So this right here is called the access control list, ACL. Each of these is called ACE, access control entry. Okay, each of the item on the list is an entry. The list itself is access control list. Okay, all right. Okay, so now I forgot to bold this for you. You are gonna click on the CIS27 student user, and you are gonna look at the permissions. Are the permissions the same? They should be the same, right? As in, if you took the information from earlier, they should be the same. Okay, now I'm gonna go over the inheritance. Anytime that you have a folder inside a folder, right? Look at this. So when we have 27, we have, we go to C. And if we go to, what was it?
Quick question.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm the only one that's having this issue, but every time I try to add the CIS27 student group, I keep getting an error just saying there's no such global user or group.
What are you doing it through? Are you doing it exactly like what it says
In the
here?
administrative command prompt.
Yeah, so are you trying, did you do this?
Yes.
Okay. Administrator?
Yeah, so after I entered that, that's when I got the error that said there's no such global user or group.
Okay.
I'm not sure if anyone else.
Anybody else? Because I just ran it. It doesn't have that problem. Yep.
Did you run it?
So you have to go here, CMD.
Yeah, pretty sure. A few times already.
Did you use global group or local group?
I did.
Like
I'll try it
this?
again. I'll try one more time.
Okay,
I don't want to slow everybody up.
right? But once you did it already, it's gonna throw an error because it already did it, right? I added the user already. So if it says it's already been added, that means it's already a member. But it should tell you. So I can remove that real quick. Let's do that. It doesn't update it. Anybody else have that issue? Just two? So I can test it with another account for you. And if you guys can proceed.
I got it.
What was the issue?
Something I did wrong.
Okay. Probably a typo, right? Yep, it should work. Yeah, just check how you type it. Okay, so we passed. Okay, let's talk about inheritance real quick. When you have a folder inside a folder, right, whatever you change on the outside, which is the parent folder, carry within. So what do I mean? Here's my folder CIS27. Inside it is the test, right? If I look at the folder properties, okay, see how we added that account? Well, it should carry that for the inside too, because it's gonna inherit. So think of it like a family, right? The child inherit traits from the parents. So anytime you have a child object like this, like the test folder, when you look at it, its properties, you would see that I didn't make the change to the test, but it carried the inheritance from the outside folder or the parent folder. Therefore, you see CIS27 student, right? We didn't modify test folder. We modified the outside folder, which is CIS27 folder, okay? So you should see the inheritance, and I put that here. Are the permissions the same as the CIS folder? Yes. If you don't make any changes from the inside, it should carry exactly the same as the outside. So whatever file or subfolder that you put inside that parent folder, it should carry that. So the way that they do it, think of it like a container, right? You put anything inside that container, it's going to carry the property of the container. Okay, so it's a quicker way for us to manage a group of things. Okay, so that should be a yes there. All right, any questions regarding permissions and inheritance? And you can remove inheritance. Okay, so if I don't want the test folder to carry the same property, I can issue the command to remove the inheritance, or I can go in and sorry, I'm on the inside right now. Okay, so on the outside, you would choose edit, and then you can go down to it's not letting me. Oh, never mind. Sorry. It's been a while. All right. So when you can go to the properties that like the way that we looked at it, right? This is your permissions. You're gonna click advanced button. And here is where you can disable the inheritance. So if you don't want the object to carry the same traits as its parent object, we can change it by doing the disable the inheritance. And at the command prompt or the PowerShell level, you can do the same thing. Okay. All right. So let's look at 24. We are going to search for PowerShell. And we're going to right click, run as administrator. Now the path for run as administrator is different than the path that you would run as a normal user. Okay. So let me close command prompt. Let's come back to here. So the first thing that you're doing here is you are creating two folders. One on the outside, which is shared, just like what you did with CIS27. And the second on the inside, the subfolder called assets. Okay. And when that happens, it confirms that it creates the directory and the subdirectory in it. So I wanted to see if that happens, right? So now if I go to C drive, right, I should see share and I should see assets. You see, that wasn't there before. So when you issue this command and in PowerShell, in command prompt, that will be a make dir, right? Like a make directory and then your folder name under the path. In PowerShell, even though it's on the same OS, you're going to use new item as a command, and the path is the option or the switch, and you need to specify where that's located. Otherwise, it's going to put it here. Okay. If you don't specify the path, it's going to put it at the current location, which is under C users and VC. Okay. Question. All right. On the next one, and PowerShell works, it's C# in the back, so it is C related. So you're going to see a lot of the things that's similar in programming language. Sorry, let me recopy this. It doesn't always
yeah, it has to be exact. I know.
sometimes it doesn't let me paste. So annoying.
Yeah, sometimes it does.
There you go. All right. So what we're doing next is we're going to make a file called client list. And when you're using a file, you need to say what type of name it is and the file extension. It's like doing the, you know, when we did the echo or when we did, you know, touch in Linux, right? We're making a file, and here you have to specify that it is a file. Okay. If it's a folder, you have to say that it's a folder, and then the append value is what you put into that text file. So I can verify that, right? Now the file just popped up, and then I open it up, there's the text, right? So that's what you can do. Okay. So here it gives you the properties of that file and folder. Okay, we're gonna make a second file. It's funny how it puts things on RAM and then it try to access it. There we go. All right, so we made a second file, and this is for a project, for your client project. So again, we're using the new item command. We specify the path where that's located, which is on the C drive under the share folder, and then the file name, and then the file type, right? That's a file is the type, item type. Otherwise, it's gonna throw an error. So when you're getting a red bunch of messages, that means you type things in wrong or it doesn't understand your command. And then we append the text. So I wanted to see this, right? Now I have a second file after running that command and my text file, right? Okay. The next, what we're gonna do is we are going to create a variable. And a variable is just a location in the memory where it's gonna save this information. Now, you don't have to use the variable. You can type out the path every time, but this will save you some time, right? On the new PowerShell, you cannot shortcut combining variable with the path. It does not work. On the old way, it works. So if you have a very long path, I don't want to type like 5-10 different folders in that path. I can make a location in my memory and then I can just reference it every time, right? So you can do it that way. All right, PowerShell, you're gonna work with me here. Okay, so let's just do dir is equal to, and you just initialize what that path is. So if you want a different path, you can specify, or you can just create a new variable, right? And put things in quotation mark. Okay, so now you are gonna look at the C drive and open up the share folder. You should see, right, your 2 files that you created. Okay, and then the assets folder that you also created, the first step in PowerShell. Okay, so answer the question there. Sorry, that should be a question mark. And then we are gonna navigate 1 step back. So go back to this, click Windows C, which takes you to share, right click it, go to properties. So I right click share folder, and then you can go to the properties. So by default, it puts these groups there. That's the basics, right? And then you click the administrators group. The administrators group has full control, everything. Why are we looking at administrator group? Because when you're using run as administrator, you're operating in that group. So what happens is you are the local administrator, and whatever you make, right, as the administrator, you should be making it at the high level. Now, if I wanted to make something for users to, as a user, it's going to reduce that permission, right, to this.
How do you copy and paste on Shell?
You copy in Word and then you click it on Shell and it should paste. Sometimes it doesn't remember it from RAM, so you have to try it a few times. But if you copy and you click on it, it should paste it.
Oh, you said right click.
Did it paste?
Yeah, everything's wrong.
Yeah, so if it tells you that, you know, something is funky, go fix the symbol. Sometimes that does it too. So take us, okay, now next we are gonna do a get ACL. So get ACL is gonna give you the access control list, right, for that directory based on that path. So what it's showing you here is this is the path for the share folder. It has the owner of this is the administrator, right? And it is have access, full control. Now, when you see it this way, it doesn't give you the detail. The ... just means that it has additional details. So this is an overview of how you can view that security tab for that particular group. Okay, it's just exactly like how we looked at the security tab. Okay, but just for that group. So take a screenshot is the listed allow permission the same as step 33? It should be, right? How do I know it's the same? It says full control. I saw earlier that the admin has full control, see? So it should be yes. It's just verbose, right? It would show in text instead of GUI. Okay. So here I give you some information about using get ACL. This display your current Ntfs permission. Okay. So now you know how to do it. You just got to make sure that you include the path. If you don't have the variable, type up the whole thing. C:/share/assets, blah, blah, blah. Okay, next, we are going to look at specific property for that folder. And when you put it in parentheses like this, you can use it. And those of you who learned programming already, this can be treated like a property of a method. Okay, you learn Java or Python or C#, you know how. So this is going to allow you to access that path to obtain the permission for that content in that path, the object in that path. So this is exactly as this. You see? How do I know it's exactly? Well, it tells me the administrator got full control, the system got full control. You know, there's built-in users, there's some read and execute and synchronize, there's modify, synchronize, and so on. So it's like looking at your security tab when you're using the get ACL path and .xs. This is a very important area in security. You should realize that there are a lot of technicians and administrators that don't know how to do this in PowerShell. Most textbooks don't go over this. All right. Then next we can also, if you don't want to use it this way, you can also use it this way. So the pipe separate two commands. So you can combine two commands into one line using a pipe, and it's the same concept in Linux. Okay, so we can do this or this. So when you use expand property, this is a built-in function that's in PowerShell that allows you to see more details in the access information. Okay, screenshot it for me. And then describe your output compared to step 9 or your security tab, right? Is it like the same? Yeah, it should give you the summary of this. Okay, so what do I take a screenshot of this and then tell me how the output is. So you can say that PowerShell would output the details of each group and associated permissions. That's it. So later on, when you look at that again, you can remember, oh, when I did that, it looks like this, and this is what it's supposed to give me, right? So these screenshots are really for you. And then from when I grade, I look at it to see if you completed it. So how do I do screenshot? Print screen button at the top right, or you can use the snippet tool. All right, so we can put things into table where we would use format table, and not everything can be put in table. Lists of things can be put in table, right? PowerShell is somewhat intuitive in that way. When if you're using something that's like one single item, it would not like to be put into table. They formatted certain things for table. So let's do the next one. And when we auto size, we're just going to make the table fit. So this gives you a better view in how you look at your permissions. When do we use this? In security, you have to do inventory of all your objects, right? Once in a while, you have to go through and you have to check, oh, what subject did we give access to these for those objects? So you would create a list of things that would have associated permissions. Okay, so this gives you an overview on whether things are inherited, right? What was allowed, okay? Better picture than this, right? So some people prefer top down and some people prefer it this way. I like things in tables, so, and also you can extract data from this and export it out. Okay. So how does the output different than the previous? And sorry about the number, I changed up your, it should be 35. It should be set. So how is that different than 35, right? You can say that, you know, information provided is in the table format and it gives you the overall summary. So some of the details it gives you, right? It still gives you the same thing, inheritance flags, and but it also gives you like how those flags ties to a certain object. So this gives you, in my opinion, it gives you more of an overview or a summarize of this. Okay, so then what we're going to do is we are going to filter the inheritance. So it looks kind of like the previous because it's the same thing that we're asking for, right? But you can also filter things down. So how do I know what is filter? Well, what you put in here, the parameter is what you want to filter. So this here, what I want is I want to look at objects that are inheriting the characteristics from the parent folder, right? So this is what it's telling me, and I put it in the table as well. So you would specify how you want to filter in this parameter field. Any question? Take a screenshot. Then we're going to do two separate execution. So first it will be this. Okay, so when you declare a variable, you simply use the $sign, okay, and then the variable name. You can name it anything you want, right? All that is it's associating that name with a location in RAM, and it's going to store this instruction. So when you call on it back here, it's going to plug this in to here, okay? And when you use their documentation, not everything works, okay? Their example, I'm just gonna let you know, all the web examples, you always wanna test it. Even they show, right, what they tell you in those examples, what it's the purpose of it, right? Sometimes some stuff on there is, it's broken, so you gotta test it. So what I'm doing in the next one is I'm creating a variable and I'm going to look at the location for, look at the client list file, which is at C share folder. And I want to get the information for the access control list, right? It's permission. And put it into a variable so I can use it. Okay. Then next, I'm going to use that variable to set it for the second file. So this is how you can copy permissions from one file to another file and make it exactly the same. Yes, you can right click and click, right? Or you can just do it in 2 lines. so lovely that I have to wait for it. Let's try it again. Update, copy and RAM, and yeah, I know it's just the way Windows is, you know.
Seriously, he facing the RAM.
And then sometime when you do screenshot, right, it also doesn't update it. So it's the OS design. Little clunky. Yes, that is correct. All right. But you guys get the idea. So when you do that, you take what's in client list and you put it onto client projects. And I did test these because otherwise you would run into a lot of issues, right? And thank God for copy and paste. But you should, when in the regular world, right, we're not going to be able to have instruction like this. You're just going to have to type.
Yeah.
Just going to make sure you type things correctly. And it is case sensitive. Okay. All right. So we learned how to make a local user using command prompt. This line right here, create a local user using PowerShell. You're going to see some similarity, right? So PowerShell like to use new when you're making a new object. So you would use new dash local user. And then you're going to give it a name. So you're going to say name. So in PowerShell, it is a program, right? So when you plug that in, basically it takes this and it put it into the name variable that is for the program itself. So your user account is CIS27 test. The description, right? How you would put in what kind of account it is. You can say this is a test account, and then whatever password. In this case, I choose not to use a password. So because I want to show you how you can do that without a password, which is not safe, but there is a way. Okay. Question. Okay. Did that run okay? You were able to make an account? And this could be your job all day long. Making an account, set ACL. One of my students, that's what he's doing right now. Pretty easy for $30, $25 an hour. Okay.
Professor, when you're coding, like after how many hours do you recommend to stop?
Huh?
That's when you're coding. Last night I was like
Coding is easy. Fixing somebody else's code is
no, I mean like
How long should you put up before a break?
I can be on it for a while. Like,
Get those
yeah.
glasses.
Yeah.
Is there any brand you recommend, Professor? Like,
Huh?
you like glasses?
I won't use that, but you can probably find it.
Will it help? 'Cause sometimes my eyes get so red.
Yeah, you should take a break every 2-3 hours.
Just set the monitor to.
Otherwise, you're
There's
gonna
a
get.
filter on there.
Yeah.
I tell myself like I'll
Just
probably
set a
smoke
monitor.
weed so it helps with my eyes.
Okay.
The white light kills it more.
Like type-
Send monitor.
Yeah, just take a break. All right, number 40. Okay, you are making a variable, right? And you're copying your access control list from that file and store it into this variable. Then you are going to use identity is our variable, and that's for the user that you just made. Okay. And then when you do system rights, that is just what permission you want. Ntfs permission you want for that account or that object. Okay. And then if you, for the type, we are making another variable and you can say deny or allow. In this case, we're using allow. Okay. So if you want to deny someone, put deny. Okay. If you deny full control, it override everything else. Okay. All right. And then when you issue this, what that does is it's going to plug all of those things that you declare in those variable into one area, which is file system access rule argument list. Okay. Then when you apply the rule, you simply bring that in. There is more to this, but I found out that the new PowerShell version, when you're using like the file access method from that, I gotta troubleshoot it a little bit. It stopped working, so we have to find out why it wasn't working. Because sometimes they disable certain functions and then enable new ones. So you have to see. So version to version also is also their changes. Okay. So when you set this, you simply anytime it uses access control, as long as you have right your new object, which is here, right, and then whatever the variable is, you're going to bring everything in. Okay. Basically we're using the same access to put on that same file, but you can do it for other files. That's what I meant. So this is another way that you can do it, right? Compared to the last one.
Yes, sir. It says you cannot call a method on a null value expression.
Oh, did you receive an error?
Yeah.
From which line?
41.
Oh, this one? Yeah, it's just so disregard it. I think I skipped a couple of things here. So here, when you do access, add access rule, right? You just use a variable, like for example, new ACL or something here. But yeah, don't do this one. I gotta fix this. Yeah, they changed some of this method. Add access rule. I think you have to do another way. So 42, did you try 42? Okay, so 42, we have an ACE variable, right? ACE stands for access control entry. And in this, you're declaring you're gonna get the properties, the access control list of assets folder. And you are going to set it, which is the same. Did it give you an error too?
Yeah.
For this one?
No,
For this one, for 41, yeah.
42 is fine.
Yeah, this method, I think they modified this, so that's why you have that. It was working in like version 5 or something like that. All right, that's okay. So 42 should work. So basically you can go and get ACL from another folder, right? And then set it the same, right? We saw that, how you can copy it. So get and set. Get just means obtain the access information, and set is to make sure that you set the permission. Okay. Now, if this doesn't work, if it throws an error for DIR, make sure you type in the whole path like this. Okay. Because sometimes it does not like plugging in the variable in the path like that. And I can't start in the middle. I have to go through everything because I'm using a certain, actually it should be. Did it throw an error on that one? Okay, it should be fine. Okay, good. Because sometimes it's finicky about plugging in the variable in the path. So as you finish that, take the screen capture for me. And then do you see the set permission from the previous set? You should. Right? It should tell you what that permission is.
I feel like people that would like to script to automate more stuff would use PowerShell, and then just for like one-time changes, they would use command.
You can write a whole program and then run it in shell. You can write a whole program in C and run it in shell. That's or Python script and run it. That's the point behind it, is to be able to run other things. We don't do line by line. I want to show you this, so in case if you need to do something real quick, this is what you do, right? But we normally write functions and methods and things like that to be able to handle this. And And yeah, I apologize. I think I didn't have this. It should not be remove permissions, but there is a remove options in PowerShell. So what you can do is you can get that a certain thing. So skip 44. I'll fix that. I'll update the file tonight. Okay. So the important thing that you take away from this is whenever you need to set permission, you need to do a set ACL, right? And I want to drive that home. It is exactly like how you would click, edit, and do these things in GUI. You would need to do that. And we saw how we can view permission and set permissions. And permissions are different than privileges, okay? Now, when you look at the share folder, right? When you look at the share folder, it should be identical because we copy exactly the same thing, right? And so inside it, okay, we talked about the inheritance earlier. You can also remove inheritance. So when you look at the assets folder on the inside, it should be exactly the same thing as the share folder on the outside. And then also the files, because you copy, when you look at the properties of these files, right? They should be identical, right? They should be identical as you copy the exact, you get from the client list and you set it onto the project. So that's how we are able to duplicate the same thing. So why do I do that instead of manually clicking? Because when you're manually clicking, sometimes you can make mistake. You might miss something, right? So you should let the system get and set. Okay, questions. So we are not doing 44. I think you might run into this issue with 41 because of the add access rule here. But we know how to add the access rule by using the get and the set. Okay. Question. Okay, so this should be yes. Take a screen capture of your share property, close your property sheets, upload your document if you're done. If not, turn it in before Sunday. Just follow the steps. Okay, and then close your PowerShell. Okay. We finished a little early today, so if you're done and you submit everything, make sure we remove our USB, right? And then we shut down the computer so it wipes everything that you did clean. It takes out all the user account, everything, so it defrees it. See, my browser's listening to me. Google is trying to, I said certain keywords, and so it started asking like, do you need facial? You need to input your facial recognition. All right, so let me stop recording.
Professor, I think it was last class where I